let's finish up with the remainder of exempt securities from the previous video. So when it comes to, we addressed a bunch of them ranging from, U.S. government securities to commercial paper, and understanding that, I think we finished off with that commercial paper has to have those 3 requirements: 270 days or less, 50K or more, single A or a higher rating, not the same as investment grade. The remaining 2 are kind of interesting because those are the 2 that can actually be revoked by the administrator of the state, right? The administrator is kind of like almost like the person who's responsible for executing, kind of like the executive branch and enforcing the USA, right? Making sure that investors are not getting defrauded, right? So the administrator has the right to revoke the exemption for these 2 exempt securities and any exempt transaction. So that's probably what we're going to jump into right after these 2 exempt securities. So the first one being a nonprofit security. A nonprofit, because of the fact that anybody can really create a 501c3 nonprofit, you could just create a nonprofit for the sake of of selling fake securities. So that's one, and then the other one would be like an employee benefit plan security. So same concept, right? Like you can create a fake benefit plan for your employees, like a stock option plan for, and just to create these fake securities. So that's why the administrator has the right to revoke those exemptions. Now, they can't revoke the exemption for like a Toronto municipal bond, right? That's beyond their capability, beyond their scope, right? So now let's talk about the remainder, the exempt transactions that the administrator can revoke as well, right? Any of these. Now, one of them is going to be an unsolicited non-issuer transaction. All that means is that John calls you and tells you what to do. So, generally speaking, you can't get away with selling an unregistered non-exempt security unless it's in an exempt transaction. So it kind of sounds a little wacky. What the hell does that mean? Essentially, what that means is a security is either going to be exempt or non-exempt, right? So if it's non-exempt and if it's unregistered, that means it's not legally allowed to be sold, right? But these exempt transactions allow a way out, right? So, but again, you still would have to be registered as an agent to have this, to sell this unregistered non-exempt security, right? In this particular scenario. So, if John calls you and says, hey, I want to purchase this unregistered non-exempt security, this bond that might not be registered in the actual state where the sale is being held, they're allowed to basically get away with that. But again, they still have to be registered because you're coming to them to buy this bond. But they're allowed to, as most likely what they're going to do is they're going to make you sign a letter of non-solicitation saying, hey, this is an unsolicited transaction because they want to CYA, right? So that basically allows you to sell an unregistered non-exempt security. One of them is unsolicited non-issuer, meaning that the client made that decision and you're not the issuer of the specific security. That's one. Another one is like an isolated non-issuer transaction. Basically, what people call it is like a garage sale or whatever. It's kind of the weirdest one, the least defined one under the USA. Essentially, what it means is that you can sell your unregistered non-exempt securities to your to your freaking, to your neighbors or your family and friends, but just, not all of them, maybe one of them, but not all of them, right? That's why it's called isolated, not all of them, right? Now, other examples are also when it comes to a debt transaction. The key is it has to be a bona fide loan. Bona fide just means like a real loan. Bona fide, right? Real. So you're not basically creating a fake transaction to basically avoid registration in the USA. So what does that actually mean? So for example, let's say, I want to borrow $10 million, right? And I ask some rich guy and he's like, hell no. All right. And then I'm like, hey, but what if I give you this unregistered non-exempt security as collateral, right? He's like, okay, all right, this sounds interesting, right? So I do that. And And now all of a sudden, if I don't pay up, he can legally sell that security without having to be registered, right? So that's an interesting one. Another one example of one would be institutional. So that's a common one. So whenever you sell securities to an institution, that's going to be exempt because institutions can handle themselves. Now, what's interesting is under the USA, investment advisors are not considered institutions, but broker-dealers are, insurance companies are, banks, trust institutions, stuff like that are all going to be are all going to be institutional, right? So that makes it exempt. What other exempt transactions do we have? Oh, private placements. Now, not to be confused with Reg D private placements, the 506B, 506C, those are exempt securities, right? That's like the whole 35 non-accredited, that thing, that's a 506B. Now, under state rules, a private placement has up to 10 retail clients. No commission can be received from the retail clients. But if you sell it to institutional, that's fine, right? And they have to be held for a 6-month holding period, right? That goes back to Rule 144. There's like control stock and restricted stock. It's considered restricted stock, has a holding period of 6 months. Essentially, what they're saying is that you can't be, if you sell it to a retail client, it's for investment purposes, not to day trade. I mean, who in their right mind is going to day trade a restricted stock or restricted security? Who knows? Another wacky one is what's called a pre-organization certificate. It's literally a certificate in an organization that doesn't exist anymore. So that has up to 10 subscribers. It's and there can be no payment or commission received. So like a private placement, you can receive payment but no commission for retail. But here you can't even receive payment nor commission. So what did we go over? We went over unsolicited non-issuer. Oh, I forgot to mention, with the isolated non-issuer, that same thing as unsolicited, it has to not come from the issuer. Meaning if I'm selling it to my friends and neighbors, that's the garage sale one, I can't be the issuer of the stock, right? So that kind of makes sense too. I mean, otherwise it's like, how is it really isolated if I'm the issuer? So, because I could always play that game. So, another one that came up, debt-related transactions. No, not debt. We talked about that, the whole bona fide loan thing, the collateralization, any sort of like, I call them kind of court-related transactions, custodian-type transactions. Basically, essentially what it means is any sort of legal event, trustee in a bankruptcy, administrator, executor of an estate, administrator just meaning it's someone that the court appointed in testate. Executor is someone that was actually in the will, and then the court said it was okay. And so anything that's or actually I wouldn't call it. I would call it more like a fiduciary type transaction. That's probably the better word for it. So all those, anything that has to do with the court, that you're going to be, if it's someone who is mentally incapacitated and there's a guardian for them, that's going to fall into that category. But like UGMA is not going to fall into that category. So I think that's pretty much most of them. I may have missed one, but I think those are the main ones. So hope you enjoyed and hope you have a great day. Bye.